So, sincerity in art. I think it's very important. My least favorite thing on the internet in terms of content is this stuff that drives me insane, which is like, I know you guys all know this format of like, baristas be like, and then it's just a bunch of shit about how dumb baristas are, and they just make fun of them, and there's no redemptive quality to it. It's just tearing them down and going like, look how silly and stupid these people are, right? You can do it with teachers. You can do it if you look at this guy with dads who are talking about movies and YouTubers and millennials. Yes, it's very kind of the default form of comedy in our generation, I would say. Is that fair?
Yeah,
I think that's fair, yeah.
Yeah, it drives me nuts. So, in order to talk about sincerity, we have to get into postmodernism a little bit. Raise your hand if you're like, I have no clue what postmodernism is. Like, I've never talked about it much. Okay, so you guys know a little bit, or maybe a lot. So I'll go relatively quickly. The claim I'm making here is that postmodernism is like the water that we're swimming in. I don't know if you know the David Foster Wallace idea of this is water, but he says two fish are swimming along and an older fish comes up and he says, hey boys, how's the water? And the fish go, what's water, right? And the idea is when you're in something so deeply, you don't even know what it is, right? And so culture is that way for many people, well, for all of us, for a lot of different reasons. And I would argue that we have moved past postmodernism in some ways, but we're very stuck in it in other ways. And the internet has really exacerbated this problem. In order to understand postmodernism, we have to go back one more generation to modernism. And I'll do this very quickly, but modernism was 20th century. We're all of a sudden very confident in ideologies and beliefs. We have a lot of grand narratives about God and nationalism and our families, right? We're very overconfident, and that leads to, if you guys know your history, fucking terrible things, atrocities, World War I and II, a lot of death and colonialism and all kinds of terrible things happening. This is bad. And as a reflex, sort of a virus to protect ourselves against that overconfidence, postmodern thought came along. Started in academia, moved into the culture of today, right? And that starts maybe in the 50s, 60s to become mainstream and more popular, and gets more and more intense as we get into the 21st century. So, as a response to that overconfidence, what did postmodernism do? Start deconstructing everything, tear it apart, figure out what's at the core of it, why it's bullshit, what can we do about it, yes? We also are thinking a lot about cultural relativity, right? How cultures are not right or wrong, they are relative to their positions, right? And so the good thing is we can look at other people's cultures and maybe have a little more empathy and think it through. The bad thing is that it's hard to then figure out where are we in the culture, right? And then every person becomes an island. Everybody is their own culture and their own perspective, which is good and true. This is the thing about postmodernism. That's true. I think that's obvious to us. We're not going back from that. Everybody knows this. Yes, that we all have our own individual perspectives. That's the default in any cultural conversation these days, which wasn't always the case. So along with that, power constructs reality, language constructs reality. Because we're more skeptical of power now, we also are post-colonial, which is good. The British Empire stopped Britishing all over the place. We stopped quite a few atrocities in the name of like postmodern relativism. Yeah. Identity is constructed, and then weird shit like urinals are art, and you can tape a banana to a wall and call it art as well. Can you see what? Okay. All right. We'll blow through these, but here are some kind of philosophers who were talking about postmodernism. Lyotard defined it as an incredulity towards meta-narratives. So any narrative that is saying something about like the totality of the human experience, we go absolutely not. Religion is a big one, right? We just, basically the 20th century was spent tearing down religion to its nuts and bolts. Wittgenstein talked about language games, and this is kind of a post-structural thing where words aren't just symbols that mean something anymore. They become a web of entangled ideas, right? And then we start to see how every word means something different to me than it does to you, and cross-culturally we have a lot of communication issues, and again, every man is an island. It becomes a way of separating each other from ourselves. And this leads to, Wittgenstein said, I don't know my way about. I think of it as like this postmodern spiral, where I'm like trying to find any truth or meaning, and I'm having a very hard time. Baudrillard talked about this with culture. The simulacrum is like a culture is a copy of a copy of a copy. And then Frederick Jameson's kind of my favorite. He said this isn't just a cultural movement, this is the cultural logic of late capitalism. So if you have a capitalist society, you're going to get to this point at some point. You're going to start adopting these cultural values. And he talked a lot about depthlessness, that our culture is being flattened. It's like a lot of pastiche and irony, nostalgia. High and low culture have collapsed. This is a big thing in America. Like, our president is rich as fuck, but is like basically a redneck. And I don't know how you guys feel about this. Some of you are a fair bit younger than me, but it doesn't feel like we've been producing new music for like a generation or two. Like, music is kind of stuck in time.
I disagree.
Yeah, that's fair. I think it's more like the narrative of music and musical progress has like exploded. Part of that's the internet, but I do think some of that is postmodernism.
It's like the death of indie and like how like just the narrative of bands is so
Yeah.
different now.
It's not, I don't even mean like, oh, millennial music is better. It's not that.
Like, top 100 shit hasn't changed.
True.
Yeah.
There's a lot of good music, but it's like harder to find. It's like nicher. It's not like every year the top 100 is like a completely new thing. It's been the same.
Yeah. Yeah, also music is a lot more about sampling, so this is kind of related to Jameson and also Baudrillard, like just copies of copies of copies, and you start to get removed from the original idea itself. So with all of this postmodern value, all these values floating through the air, what are we left with? What is in the water of at least my generation, and I would argue still Gen Z? I call millennials and Gen Z together, I call them Gen Silver. That's why my channel is called Gen Silver Dress. So what are we left with? And these are things that to some degree we're taking for granted. To some degree in the last 5-10 years we maybe are moving past, right? And culture is complicated. It's like we are and we aren't all at the same time. But what are we left with? Language is insufficient, right? You can't get any truth from just saying things, right? This is a mess. It's very hard to communicate with people, and we're always like layering our conversations, and like circling is kind of like a confusing way of using language. We know what's the David Foster Wallace quote? How strange I can have all this inside me, and to you it's just words, right? That's the feeling, I think. So everything is a system, like everything is power. This is, I mean, all of the conspiracy theories and things that we have in the modern day is kind of built on this idea of like, you can't do anything without expressing some political value, right? The personal is the political, if you've heard that before. God is dead. Now, interestingly, since I started exploring these ideas like 6-7 years ago, we've had a kind of a revival of religion in America, which is, didn't see that coming. But I think it actually does tie into kind of my overall thesis. So we know about this idea of the map is not the territory. Part of postmodernism is like the map is going to screw with the territory. There's no avoiding, however you define something, however you tell the story, you are then changing and interacting with the territory. Culture is relative, we talked about that. Identity is fake, like whatever our identities are, it's all just constructed, and it's like a relationship between us and the other people, and it's not anything that you can grab onto or define cleanly. Simulacrum, copies of copies of copies. We still hate overconfidence, right? If we see somebody trying to stand for something, it really bothers us. I'm fascinated by some of the people here who are high status, if we can talk about status for a second, who are like genuinely confident, right? They stand behind what they say, and like the fact that we can engage with them and admire them is kind of a big deal, because we don't tend to have heroes and leaders in that way anymore. Does that track with you guys? Yeah. Trying hard is weird. A lot of times it's like cringe to try hard, and so you'll notice like kind of as a bit, this slideshow is like not made very well. That's kind of the postmodern experience. Dreg is like the best at this. If you watch Dreg at all, he's like trying very hard while not trying at all. It's very interesting. I find it to be like really brilliant postmodern art. Yeah, and then believing in things is not great. So put more simply, this leaves us, and I'm trying to connect modernism to everything else we're going to talk about here, or postmodernism. We tear everything down. That's those shitty videos that I hate from the beginning, right? We're very ironic, we're very cynical, very satirical. There's this smug detachment. If you've watched The Office, you know how Jim is constantly going like this. That's
It's bad. It's literally bad.
What? Oh, sorry. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that smug detachment. David Foster Wallace was talking about this in the 90s. So it wasn't the internet, it was TV that he was interested in. And the thing about TV is you're watching through a screen, so you risk nothing. You're just a viewer, right? You get to like kind of ogle this, and they're not real usually, unless it's reality TV. They're a fake, an actor, right? But you get to judge them without risking anything yourself. And this is a problem on the internet as well that I think has gotten worse in some ways. Along with that, we're just constantly performing, right? And we're not only watching performances, but we're watching ourselves watch the performance, and we're performing and then watching ourselves watch it. Like it keeps spiraling backwards. And then something that I coined this term that I think is very useful, and I've heard other people say different versions, is reflexive self-reflection. So I don't know if you guys have talked to like your baby boomer grandparents, but when they believe in something, they just say, this is how I feel about this thing. And you can hear like the calmness to it. They built their values brick by brick, and they just have it here, and they consult it when they need it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
We don't do that anymore, or at least a lot of people don't. I don't feel like that's how I grew up. You are kind of like always thinking about the context of everything you say, and you're thinking about how the other person is interpreting it while you're also interpreting them, and so on and so forth. It's very meta layered and can be very unmooring. Any questions so far? I feel like I'm moving very quickly.
I have a comment.
Yeah.
I've had this sort of thought in my head about the smug detachment thing. It feels like Gen Z and Gen Alpha have this like smug detachment, nothing means anything, you know, sincerity is cringe. And I think that that's also reflexive to millennials being like extremely sincere. Like the reason people hate on millennial humor is they're like, you know, if the millennials are cringe because when they say something there's no irony in it. Like that's the thing. And I think it's almost like a pattern, right? Like Gen Xers, when you listen to the kind of like, I had this thought when I saw that song, you know, Live and Let Die.
I don't know the lyrics, but yeah, okay.
Live and let die, they're taking the phrase live and let live and making it say live and let die. That's a very like, it's
Based.
like, it's like so based. It's like, you know, taking a common aphorism and making it like, you know, happily never after. It's very like Gen Z coded of like, you take a thing people say and you're like, I don't care, fuck it.
Yeah. No, this is really interesting because my fascination with this is because I didn't have Wi-Fi until I was like almost out of high school, and then I didn't have a smartphone until I was almost out of college, right? And so I'm not quite native to all this shit. Like I get it, and I've studied it, and I like watch Dreg and CJ and stuff like this, but I'm not. It's just not quite native to me. So like that millennial cringe is because we were these guinea pigs who were like the first on the internet. I was like on MSN Messenger being like, oh my god, I'm talking to 5 people at once. I'm the coolest person in the world. And then now this next generation is like, that's child's play, right? This shit has exploded. So it's just a very different experience. And like, we had these very basic memes where it was like one part punchline, very simple, like a Curiosity Bear or whatever the show was called. So yeah, and part of the reason this is so interesting too is generational theory is very important now because the generations are moving so quickly. We have these fundamental differences within like a 5-year gap. Right? Whereas, you know, if you're born in the 1800s, your dad was using the same technology and like talking about the same stuff that you probably were. So we're moving so fast, it's really impossible to keep track of this stuff, which is, I guess, kind of why I'm interested in it. Just as an example, like postmodernism, right? This like really reflexive, self-aware, meta, ironic humor. David Foster Wallace would say that it's enervated into the culture itself. So it used to be like you would use postmodernism to tear down, like punk rock music was tearing down these bullshit values that were clearly hypocritical and not reflecting the reality of the time. But now it's been co-opted. So corporations are using postmodernism to be like, we're actually on your team and like we get it and we're smarter than everybody else, right? You and I, like, you should buy a Mac because like you're cool and like you get what I'm doing, right? Which is bad, I would argue.
I feel like the ad on the furthest left is almost like a completely different category from the other two. It's like it feels like while the other two are sort of like an evolution of advertising, that's like a response to the evolution of advertising. It's like this is even further detached from the concept of advertising than the other two are. It's like no, the point is we know that you know that we know what we're doing, so we're gonna leapfrog even further and be like, no, see, we get it even more.
Right.
Like we get it more than you thought we did, therefore we're memorable.
And this is the experience, it's just layers and layers and
spirals.
layers. The next layer would be like, fuck you, you won't buy our product.
I literally was about to say the next layer is a bag of Doritos that just says "fuck you."
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, what are we even doing
It's the
anymore?
idiocracy,
I actually really want that post.
Oh, you're right. Go ahead,
I
Ariane.
really want that oat drink now, because I love the ad. It makes me feel like by buying it, I'm in on the joke. Like, look at me, how silly I am.
Right.
I'm buying this thing for no reason.
Yeah.
Right.
So, again, this is very millennial coded, but what is this postmodernism we grew up in? If you want some cultural examples, the best one is Seinfeld. So Seinfeld was like the show of the 90s, and famously, Larry David, who worked on it with Seinfeld, they were the two main writers. In the writer's room, the like system of values, the like stated goal was no hugging, no learning. If you write this show, if you're writing an episode, nobody's allowed to hug, nobody's allowed to learn anything. And that to me is like poison. And that kept moving through the culture. If you'll see on my door, on my room, I put hugging and learning. Because fuck that. Like, no hugging, no learning is awful. And you see it a lot. I grew up with Family Guy. That was like my actual comedic touchstone as a little kid and teenager. And now when I watch Family Guy, I want to vomit because it's just a rapid fire machine gun of like, tear this down, tear this down, tear this down. Isn't this stupid? Aren't people stupid? Isn't this stupid? Isn't family stupid? It's just wrecking everything and making fun of everything with no redemptive anything. It's really gross in my opinion. And it's funny. Like it's, you know, this stuff is funny. I'm not hating on it in that way, but yeah. Always Sunny, completely irredeemable characters. If you watched it before, they have no morality, there's nothing good about them, there's no lesson at the end, it's all and you're supposed to know that and make fun of them, but it's still like if you're being ironic and detached and hip, you don't actually do the thing at the end. You're just left with nothing. South Park is kind of the same way. South Park does a really interesting thing where it's super cynical and ironic all throughout the whole thing, and it's tearing down cultural institutions in a way that hilarious and I love. But at the end, they do this thing where Stan or Kyle or somebody goes like, you know, I learned something today. And then it gives you a moral lesson, but it's making fun of the whole idea of a TV show giving you a moral lesson. Does that make sense? It's fucking really insidious, actually. Even though, again, love South Park. Any questions about any of that? Because I'm going to move on to the internet for a little bit.
I feel like you could do like a whole essay on like how television and just like wider culture in general from the 80s to like the 2000s shifted over that course. Yeah. But that's probably like a treasure trove.
They is, and actually I did.
Is that what your essay is about?
That's my master's thesis.
Here's something that I think about, and this is really the problem, like the lesson behind, really, like the incentive structure behind no hugging, no learning the goal isn't to destroy things. That is the secondary outcome, and it's like a byproduct. The goal is to make a forever show. The reason that you do no hugging, no learning is purely to make money.
Well, they had other shows that lasted like 10 plus seasons before that did hugging and learning. I mean, there's like dozens. Before Seinfeld, there's a dozen.
What I'm saying, though, is that you won't have an ever-evolving audience. You just get a bigger and bigger audience because you get to do the same thing for all of those seasons.
I agree, but I think Larry David's goal was less in creating a forever show and more in trying to satirize and I guess like evolve from like that kind of like 80s sitcom family stereotype.
Yeah. Well,
I don't think he was doing it specifically to create a forever show.
Yeah. Even
though I mean it is a formula for a forever show. Yes, I agree.
Well, okay. Then I would say that even if that isn't his intention, the fact that it is the thing that creates a forever show and a larger audience in a forever show means that it's like it's sort of like an evolutionary pressure. Like that show, whatever show does that is gonna win.
That's fair enough. And I mean, we have seen it win in the last few decades. So
Yeah,
fair
like
enough.
Family Guy, like It's Always Sunny. Like,
Fair enough, I suppose.
Yeah, if you take like TV of the 60s and 70s, which obviously I wasn't around for, but you know, like Leave It to Beaver and fucking the Brady Bunch and stuff, it had a clean moral lesson, and it was saying this is how family should be, and this is what we should be doing, and like what community and friendship and love should all look like. Very straightforward and clean. And postmodernism was necessary because that was a deeply hypocritical bullshit view of what was actually, this was the same time as the civil rights movement. Like,
Yeah,
America was not
propaganda.
represented properly in these shows. It was aspirational and it was, you know, nice. And when MAGA talks about making America great again, they're probably pointing to these shows and being like, that's how it was. And it's like, well, was it? If you watch
Yeah.
Mad Men, that's very much what that's about. The show
Yeah.
is like, this is actually what that time was like. Now, whether that's true, I don't know. Aria, you were gonna say something?
Most of what I want to say has already been said. That Seinfeld's policy is of no hugging, no learning was a reaction to the phoniness of previous sitcoms.
Yeah.
Something I think
Yeah.
is interesting about understanding family, I think is understand when talking about Family Guy.
Right.
Is that The Simpsons was a big hit and was a response to the perceived unrealisticness of previous sitcoms, but The Simpsons still kind of had one-footed in that the characters were supposed to be sympathetic.
Mm-hmm.
You weren't supposed to go, what if the characters were going to be, what if the characters were realistic? And sometimes they did horrible things in a realistic way.
Right.
Family Guy's kind of, like, for the first couple seasons, kind of waffles, not knowing how to distinguish itself from The Simpsons. And decides, what if every single character is a horrible person and every member of the family hates each other?
Yeah, The Simpsons literally Flanderized characters. That's where the term comes from, is Flanders. You just oversimplify and make a character worse, right? Or more of the stupid thing they already
I
are.
argue that Family Guy distinguished itself by becoming a hyper-Flanderized version of
Yeah,
The Simpsons.
yeah. It was like, oh, you like
Yeah.
The Simpsons? Let's like turn that up to 11.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
skipped the Flanderization.
Yeah.
Where it's like where Homer is realistic in the sense that he's an abusive father.
Mhm.
You know, Peter like sets his kids on fire.
Yeah.
So I'm going to talk about the internet for a second. My whole thing was the postmodernism that David Foster Wallace was talking about in the 90s. It got teleported onto the internet and like accelerated and blown up, right? Like fractalized all over the internet in really bizarre ways that we couldn't have predicted. So like the kind of whole joke of the internet is like, oh, look how much it sucks here, right? Like, isn't it fucking awful? And I don't know if it had to be that way. Maybe if we'd come along during a different cultural period, it might have been a little better. And there are good pockets of the internet, but like that's kind of the status quo. So rather than like go through the whole internet, I'm just gonna use this one example that I think is really funny. And I'm stealing this from CJ, but this meme here says how to talk to short people. And you should just talk to them normally, not go like this, right? So that's layer one. It's like, it's kind of funny making fun of short people. And then the internet just takes this and just warp speed goes nuts with it. So we flip it initially, right? No, you should talk to short people like this. And then we go, talk to people? No, we're not gonna do that. We're not gonna talk to people. How to talk to short people? Fucking choke them out, pick them up, right? And then how to talk to short people? You pick them up with a crane, like a baby, or you torture them and make them tall, or you cut off tall people's legs so then you're matched up, right? We just keep going layers and layers. And the internet does this at warp speed.
Yeah.
In terms of politics, Bo Burnham would call this the backlash to the thing that's just begun. Like just hyper speed, cultural tearing apart of an artifact. So then we just keep going more and more. How to talk, I don't know. I don't even know how to describe that meme. I don't know what's happening there. Wrong, correct. I guess you should like hold somebody in your arms while you talk to them. And then we just get to absolute, like, I don't even know what any of these are.
How?
I don't know. Yes.
I
Yeah.
That's the feeling of the internet, right? So, sufficient examples of postmodern, like ironic, detached, cynical, eventually even nihilistic art and culture. There's an interesting thing that happens kind of in the 2000s, 2010s, which is you start to get a little touch, a little baby dose of sincerity. So I think the American Office is the best example. Did anybody watch The British Office?
I watched a little.
It was pretty much just cynical and was like, God doesn't work in an office suck, and isn't all this bullshit, and is everybody around me stupid? That was kind of the thing, and it was funny, but that was kind of the idea. The Office took that concept, did about 25 minutes an episode of just ironic detachment of saying, like, isn't modern office life horrible, and isn't everybody around me dumb? Aren't I working with Dwights, and aren't I a Jim? Right? And then at the last minute, or like even 30 seconds, they would give you just a smidge, just a little tiny morsel of sincerity, right? And give you like some little lesson at the end. I think this was kind of like, you have to start people off with just a little bit, and then we kind of move forward into more and more. Anybody watch Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt?
I've seen some of it, yeah.
So the whole concept of that is that she's coming from the modern era, right? She's coming from like the 50s or 60s, I think it is. She's in a bunker for a long time, and then she emerges in modern day New York City. I think I didn't watch that much, so I watched like 3 episodes.
This is correct.
Yeah, she emerges into the modern day, and her like ultra sincerity and like indomitable optimistic spirit is just met by the absolute cynical like fucking anger of the modern day, and that's where the comedy comes from. Interesting. Atlanta is fantastic about this, like Afro surrealism, but it takes a lot of like postmodern stuff, and then I don't even know if make a point is the right word, but it has values, it has something to say, and it's one of my favorite shows. And then the kind of classic examples, I didn't watch much of BoJack, but like that, some people connect very deeply to that, and
Yeah,
I think it's...
BoJack really, I don't know. BoJack definitely fits up here, but BoJack has very strong moral cores that it sticks to for years and years. I have a lot of strong beliefs in that show.
I think it is the ultimate rejection of that period of time, and I think that's why so many millennials are like, oh my fucking god, BoJack gets me, right? And then Rick and Morty is interesting. Multiverse is a really interesting metaphor for postmodernism, because this like infinite choice and infinite variety and infinite whatever ultimately leaves us with nothing, right? And so Rick is like the smartest guy in the world, can do whatever he wants. He's like, happy and joyful, but actually an alcoholic who's miserable and fucking hates everything and doesn't believe in anything. But then we find out, as you watch more of the show, that that's not actually true. He does care about his family, despite all odds, right? Despite the fact that he has millions of Mortys that he can be with if he wants to be. He does care about his specific Morty, right? So this is another way of being in the postmodern like comic tradition, while also rejecting it and having like something more to say. And then, I mean, there's so many examples of this, but the idea and my hope is that we're moving towards a new era, right? And David Foster Wallace called it the new sincerity. And David Foster Wallace killed himself in 2008, so he didn't get to see any of this. But I do think that it happened to some degree. And so my favorite example is Community, which is like, it's in the title, right? They're like, we are going to be a show about bringing people together. And the comedy is very postmodern. It takes a genre usually and it just tears it apart every episode. And it's making fun of people, but it does ultimately care about people coming together and having values and being, human beings. Kendrick Lamar, I think, is like an amazing example of this. Parks and Rec is very much like the interplay between the, what's the name of the actor who's the grumpy old guy? I'm gonna watch Parks and Rec. Oh, we'll move past him, it doesn't matter. Possibly the best recent example is, did anybody watch Everything Everywhere All at Once?
Yes.
So the Everything Bagel, I'm just gonna play the clip actually.
mean, this exact kind of thing that you're talking about here is exactly how I was feeling after coming out of Everything Everywhere All at Once. It was like return of sincerity. Like, this is what matters.
Yeah, and if without spoiling the movie too much, it rejects that notion, right? But that is the feeling of the internet of the 21st century, I think, of this. If you have everything, if you have access to everything, if you have so many possible paths in your life available to you, there's this overstimulating numbness and nihilism ultimately that comes from that, right? So I think it's a fantastic example because it does reject that. I think that's the reason it won Best Picture, despite a lot of people not liking it. It was so of that moment, which was what, 21, 22, something like that?
22.
Yeah, it was a huge, I think, cultural artifact of that time, of COVID, really. It was probably made around COVID. And then this is my favorite example is that guy in the top right is Michael Schur. And Michael Schur was the showrunner for The Office, and he specifically put that morsel of sincerity into it. And then he moved on to Parks and Rec, where he took that model and just got more sincere. And then Brooklyn Nine-Nine, if you've ever seen that, is similar. And then The Good Place is the even further example of that, which is just a show basically openly talking about philosophy and being a good person. And I know for a fact from my research that Michael Schur read David Foster Wallace's essay about all this, The New Sincerity, and specifically was a disciple of that system. So like, this is not a coincidence. Like, Michael Schur knew what he was doing and was like, I'm going to change TV, and did. And he's like a hero of mine for that. I'm not going to read these quotes necessarily, except for this bottom one, which is summarizing David Foster Wallace's ideas about this. He says, what passes for hip, cynical transcendence of sentiment is really some kind of fear of being really human. Since to be really human is probably to be unavoidably sentimental and naive and goo-prone and generally pathetic. So this is Foster Wallace's feeling about what postmodernism was afraid of and what it was rejecting. I think ultimately we're doing better with this, but we have to accept that human beings, including ourselves, are like limited and flawed and have issues. Have fun.
Are you going?
They have a thing. I'll move through the rest of this pretty quickly, but Bo Burnham, I think, is like the artist of the last 10 years that like was really on top of this, because he grew up as like the first kind of patient zero for being a celebrity on the internet as a teenager. And he went through this whole process, and then made some really incredible art about it. Who's seen Inside? No? Highly, highly recommend. I would watch it here, actually. It's not super. So, I think what postmodernism was trying to do was like struggle our way through progress as a culture. This was very like Obama era coded. I really, as a teenager, was like, we got this. We're doing it. We're pushing. We're making it. And when I did my undergrad, all my professors were talking about postmodernism as if it was the truth and it was going to lead us to the promised land. This was the system, like late 2000s, early 2010s. And so if we kept working on all of these things, then we were going to, I don't know, something good was going to happen. We were going to turn into a better world. Instead, kind of what we've seen, I think, in the last 10, 15 years, especially with Trump, is this postmodern idealism, and this struggle has led to a lot of purity spiraling, which is the thing we all kind of know about now. The breakdown of culture, tradition, and community. A lot of people don't have community anymore. A lot of people don't have religion. A lot of people don't really know where they're coming from or where they're going. It's just a problem all around the world. I think the internet has made that worse because we have a lot more excuses to be inside and like removed from our actual responsibilities and actual communities. So that leads to loneliness, a lot of hedonism, a lot of like video games and porn and et cetera, et cetera. Identity essentialism, aversions to seeking power and authority. This is kind of my problem with progressives and liberals, is right now they are so nervous about trying to be ambitious that they actively avoid it, and then we lose to people like Donald Trump.
Can I take a picture?
Sure. Yeah. And then like the last ones are kind of a joke, but like that is sort of related, is this therapeutic language creep where we're always constantly talking about like trauma bonding and this like hypersensitivity and it's part of purity spiraling. Do you guys know what I mean by that? It's like nobody can be on my side because nobody's me and it's not good enough. And like I had that so many times where I was doing my damnedest in college to communicate with people, but they were obsessed with this. Like, we have to tear down, we have to tear down, we have to tear down. So finally, it's like, all right, what do we do about this? What is this, all this postmodernism like leading to? Where do we go from here? And, you know, I called it the Sincerity Rebellion. You could also call it postmodernism. A popular term is Metamodernism. It doesn't really matter because we don't know exactly what it is and nobody's defining it in a way that everybody else is agreeing to. And they might never. But if you're into cultural theory and studying culture, you have to give it a name, I guess. Who knows? And so this is what I think we are moving towards and what we should be moving towards, which is David Foster Wallace called it single entendre values. I believe something and then I don't have a bunch of layers behind that making me believe other things or like doubt myself or undercut my own values. Stop being cool all the time. I think cool, it's so funny that our word for good in this culture is cool. Like, can you think of another replacement for cool?
Based.
Sick. Based is a good one, actually. Yeah, that's a newer one that's more popularized. What does based even mean?
It originally meant being completely true to oneself and authentic.
That's
It's
good.
kind of-
That's very metamodern, actually.
But it's kind of, you know, downslated to just being the generic good thing. And
Right,
people even
right,
use
right.
it ironically.
Yeah.
It's something that they dislike, but they think it's funny, and they go based.
Well, so cool being the default, I think, was a problem for a long time. It's like, what does that mean? Like, cool, detached, not, you know, very removed from things. Be honest, be honest, be vulnerable, be authentic. Did anybody know Brene Brown? She does a lot of amazing work on this and talking about vulnerability as a superpower that I really love. And then choosing difficult things. Like, it's so hard these days to choose community. That's why, like, Lighthaven is so amazing. It's because they have the money and they have this belief system that has organized people, and they actually have real community here. And I think a lot of people are showing up here like, oh my God, this is like overwhelming, because a lot of people don't get even a smidge of this anymore. Empathy, admiration, learning, all harder than the default. Ted Lasso is another great example, Paddington. And then, anybody watch Andor? This is like the best show in the last few years, and possibly the best sci-fi thing that's ever been made. And literally in the manifesto of the show is just like, it's an anti-fascist show fundamentally, but there's a lot of like meta-modern belief in it that I think is great. And the tagline is try. Just literally just try, which is kind of rebellion these days. So you can do any of these things. I won't go through them all, but if you want to think about it, it's like, well, how do we fight this? And what kind of art should we be consuming and raising up and making? I think new sincerity, postmodern, whatever you want to call it, we should be moving towards these things as best we can.
Hello, can you go back, please?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Could you
I'll
send
just-
the slides out?
Sure. Yeah. So I'll just read this real quick. It says, this is Foster Wallace's kind of main idea, I would say. It says, real rebels, as far as I can see, risk disapproval. The old postmodern insurgents risk the gasp and squeal, shock, disgust, outrage, censorship, accusations of socialism, anarchism, nihilism. Today's risks are different. The new rebels might be artists willing to risk the yawn, the rolled eyes, the cool smile, the nudged ribs, the parody of gifted ironists, the oh how banal. To risk accusations of sentimentality, melodrama, of overcredulity, of softness, or of willingness to be suckered by a world of lurkers and starers who fear gaze and ridicule above imprisonment without law. Who knows? It's very hard to conceive of, because I think in our minds the postmodern grip is so strong. We're still like, to be cool is to be like, oh, you know, whatever, I don't even give a shit. That's our kind of cultural touchstones. If you think of all our celebrities, that's sort of the default mode. He's saying we have to move past that, and I think we can find artists who are doing this, who are sincere, who are authentic, and that is also becoming more valued by Gen Z in ways that are a little confusing to me sometimes, but yeah, it's becoming more common. It's also sometimes not actually authentic, I would argue, but like that's what we're trying to do. That's it. No grand finale. That's the slideshow. I would say if you want like more about this stuff in video form, CJ's got 2 videos that are incredible. Came out around the time I finished my master's thesis, and I was like just blown away how I was like, yeah. And then the problem with irony is only like 10 minutes long. That's great. Covers a lot of what I just covered. And then like Stories of Old has an amazing video about multiverses and everything everywhere. That is fantastic. Okay. Thank you guys for sticking around.
That was really dope.
I wish I
Yeah.
was here earlier.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. We could talk about it. I'm happy to talk about it. Was there any like discussion or questions? I know we're over time. We can go, but.
Hey, since I'm here, I often get try. And I sometimes feel like this works on a society level. If everyone tries, some people will succeed. But on a personal level, I don't know if that's a good strategy.
To try.
I mean, of course, at some point I have to try, but I
Yeah.
really want to make sure that I also do it strategically,
Mm-hmm.
so that I at least have a plan B.
Yeah.
Know that
No,
plan B
I know
will
what you mean.
unfold.
Yeah, it feels very hard to commit to anything right now.
It's a bit what CJ Dax said about artists, like being an artist, living this way, and some people have a wonderful life this way. They only do art and they succeed,
Mm-hmm.
but others won't. So if everyone does that, some people will succeed, but me personally, like not.
Yeah. I think weirdly, like Jordan Peterson is a good person for talking about that stuff. I think he would say something like this is gonna kill you. Like life is, as far as we know, we only get the one, right? So you're all in, whether you like it or not. Like this is going to be it, and so you might as well do the most beautiful thing you can do, right? And that involves like taking on responsibility, and yeah, like you might fail, but I don't know. I think that postmodern like fear of being cringe or fear of failure or being seen, even the paralysis of like watching yourself. The artists who do succeed can like push past that and be just present. I think. I don't know. I don't have the answers. I'm not. It's not like I have some big YouTube following or whatever. I'm not there. I was killing myself trying to make my first video. So I don't know how to push past it because it was kind of how I grew up, but I think that's all we can do is try to push past it. I don't know, is that like a good answer? Also just consuming art that is sincere and like has values, it helps me be more, because that's the point of art, right, is to help you be something or experience something. I feel like that's what I get from really great, sincere art.
I find it interesting how multiverse stuff exploded. I mean, inevitably Marvel was going to bring it into their movies, but it exploded, I think, about 6 or 7 years before that even happened.
Mm-hmm.
And so it wasn't just obvious, financial incentives to start telling movies where people could just come back and where you could just undo things. There was something in the culture that made it blow up around. 2013 was when BioShock Infinite came out. It was when Rick and Morty started.
Yeah, that's what I wish I had talked about this actually. The Marvel movies, fundamentally, they're heroes' journeys, so they're very like straightforward about what they believe in, right? The values are simple and present, and like you just consume them and you get a heroic message or whatever. And then when they fucked up did you see Thor: Love and Thunder?
I did, yes.
That was Taika Waititi getting too postmodern and was like, aren't superheroes goofy as fuck? Isn't this all silly bullshit? And everybody was like, no, I hate this. We still want our heroes.